Hello and welcome. We're back. Welcome back to the TWIR Weekly Podcast. We got a lot of news today. Before we get into said news, make sure to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss any more content. Got a lot of content coming up. I'm bringing the Great Races series back because I have about 45 minutes of the 2014 Petite Le Mans that I need to get off my phone. And also I have a couple other races that I just really like, and I'm going to make commentary for them. So starting with, we're doing NASCAR first. We always do NASCAR first. The COTA weekend in trucks. We're going to start with Connor Zilisch. Connor Zilisch took the pole for the truck race. He was driving the Spire number 7. But first corner, first lap, straight off the start, cold tires. He goes off, breaks something in the truck. He goes a lap down. Gets lucky with a caution, gets back on the lead lap, and he has like a couple other penalties, but he still ends up finishing, I don't even know. He still finishes 4th. I don't know how, but if he didn't have all those problems, he would have won by a lot. So I don't know what is up with this kid. Like, if you put him in any car, he will win. If you just stick him in a car and just put him out into a series that he's never run before, he's going to win. He just will. This dude is the real deal. He won the Rolex 24 and the 12 Hours of Sebring back to back. I think he won MX5. No, he might be last year's MX5 Cup champion. I don't remember. But oh boy, we had a win from. But otherwise, with Zilisch not really contending because of his bad luck. Corey Heim ended up winning, and Marco Andretti, driving for Corey Roper, had a very weird incident where his entire driveline just came off. Like, his entire rear axle just like fell off and was rolling down the track. I don't know how that happened, but it did. And that's like the one notable thing that happened during the truck race besides an overtime finish. Moving on to Xfinity, we had a pretty entertaining Xfinity race. Kyle Larson ended up winning in the part-time Hendrick number 17 car after a couple of late race cautions, which set up, I think, 2 overtime attempts. And going through the last couple corners, Austin Hill and Shane Van Gisbergen hit each other, which caused Larson to just slide through as they both went off the track. And they both ended up fighting for second. Hill almost right hooked SVG on the front stretch. I don't know if there is a photo of that, but there are spectator accounts of it happening. Xfinity race was pretty good, actually. We had a couple of road course ringers. We didn't really have any that were like in the hunt for the win. Well, we had Larson, who was in a part-time car, but he's a full-time Cup driver, so he doesn't count as a road ringer. We had Danny Kvyat, who was in a woefully uncompetitive SS Greenlight car, which it was just awful. I think he spun on the first lap and just was a complete non-factor the entire rest of the race. So, moving on to Cup, William Byron wins from the pole. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kamui Kobayashi reignited the beef that they had at Indianapolis last year, because this was Kobayashi's second start, and apparently Stenhouse was still mad at him, spun him, leaving the S's. He said on Twitter later that it wasn't intentional, but I don't know, man. It's happened too much for it to be unintentional. Anyway, we also had the return of a very loved Cup Series operation. MBM Motorsports came back for their first Cup start since Talladega in 2022. They were supposed to come back last year, do a few races that never materialized because of sponsorship issues, but we will come back to MBM in a little bit. They had a quiet day. They finished 37th, but they kept the car in one piece and took home some money, which is going to be good for future sponsors. IndyCar had its very controversial $1 million challenge at the Thermal Club. We had the 2 heat races. The poles were won by Felix Rosenqvist and Alex Palou. They both also won those heat races. Passing was not very common for this event, which was kind of a shame because they hyped this up too much for the mediocre at best product that was actually on the track. Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan had a good day. At least in the heat races, all 3 of their cars made it into the final 12. Graham Rahal, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Christian Lundgaard. But Rahal had I don't know what it was. It was a brake issue or something like that within the first section of the final race, the top 12. But and then Pietro Fittipaldi was disqualified after a fueling issue. They didn't fill the car up the right way before the race started. But Lundgaard still ended up finishing. Got a good finish, but there's really nothing to write home about this race. Alex Palou won overall in the $1 million quote dash for the purse, which they called it. So Palou took home the $500,000. It's not even $1 million. $1 million is the total purse for everyone. It's like 1.23 million or something like that. So the winner takes home $500K, which is absolutely nothing compared to how much Palou gets paid, and he still has to pay McLaren back. $23.5 million, taking out this $500K for that weird contract thing that happened a couple years ago. The only entertaining part of the final race, the final 12, was Alexander Rossi and Joseph Newgarden throwing it back to 2019 with how much they were beating each other up on the track. It's basically the only passing that was going on all day, but it was fun to watch, and it reminded me of 2018, 2019. Man, I miss those 2 years. Those 2 years were good. And I'm just thinking how many championships Robert Wickens would have won by now had he not gotten hurt at Pocono. But there was some more concerning news on the TV side because combined viewers on NBC and Peacock barely reached 800,000. This is not good considering St. Pete didn't even hit 1 million. St. Pete got pretty close. They were up at like 900 something, but they didn't hit 1 million viewers. Thermal certainly didn't hit 1 million viewers. We're going to have to see how Long Beach does in, I don't know, 3 weeks. That's another thing I'm complaining about is the absolutely terrible schedule gap that's been left by Texas getting kicked off the schedule because NASCAR wants to repave Texas, but Texas doesn't want their 2 weekends back to back. Like, we could have had a perfect Texas doubleheader with IndyCar and NASCAR that could have brought in a ton of money, and that just didn't happen because the president of TMS just said, yeah, no, we don't want to make a bunch of money right now, which is dumb. But anyway, the way that IndyCar needs to fix its TV ratings, we need to promote. I haven't seen an ad for a race outside of the Indianapolis 500 since 2019. And it was an ad for like Long Beach or something like that. Long Beach is their second biggest race in the year. The IndyCar needs to get ads out there, not only on NBC because NBC is it's a top 3 network in the country. So even getting other ad time on NBC is gonna add viewers. But if NASCAR is on NBC, you could advertise during NASCAR races. If if IndyCar ends up moving to Fox next year, you can still advertise during NASCAR races because NASCAR splits the schedule between Fox and NBC. To fix the attendance issue, there were like 200 people at the Thermal Club. Because the tickets were like $2,000. So to fix the attendance issue, one for Thermal is to lower the ticket prices so that more than just a bunch of rich people can actually go. Fix the format. I would go with the old All-Star race format that NASCAR used. Take the winners from the past year and so far this current year and past champions and put those exclusively in the All-Star race. That is the extent of it. That's going to encourage people to win more and also up the purse so the winner actually gets $1 million. In terms of fixing on-track attendance, look at Iowa. Iowa sold out. We had concerts. It was a massive party for everybody there for that weekend. We had 2 races there. Both Hy-Vee had to put up extra grandstands to fit more people into Iowa Speedway. That's how successful this was. We need to export that model of marketing and event planning to every other track that we have. We need to add other stuff that's going to encourage people to come in and actually stay for the racing. Like the concerts, yeah, great. Have musicians come in, and maybe those people will stay and actually get interested in the race. That's how we boost the attendance. That's how we boost revenue. We just have to export the Iowa model to other tracks, and I don't think we'll ever have attendance problems ever again. If we do that for Nashville this year, we'll actually be in a very good spot because Nashville's probably going to tank in revenue since it's on the oval and not on the street track, because the street track, they were promising that there were going to be Indy cars running down Broadway, and that's not going to happen now until at least 2027. So I think the best chance to save the Nashville event is to export the Iowa promotion and marketing model to Nashville and to Milwaukee. Those are the 2 tracks that absolutely need to succeed for IndyCar's future in terms of scheduling. Because if the fans complained forever about Milwaukee coming back, they finally got their wish. And if the race is a bomb this year, if nobody shows up, that's not going to be good. If the fans harassed IndyCar for years to bring Milwaukee back, and they didn't. Well, and they did, and it was a bad event, and nobody showed up. That's not going to be good. Same with Nashville. That's how you make those 2 events work. You have to make those 2 events work if you want to keep ovals outside of the 500 and Iowa on your schedule. And then if we get Texas back, which I am praying that they just revert it back to pre-2017 so IndyCar can still race there. If we do get Texas back, that's the model we need to use. And also maybe add some NASCAR series just to boost some interest. And oh yeah, these cars that go faster than the Cup cars are still going to be there. So maybe we should check that out. But moving on, that's my little rant about attendance. I'll do a video about that later in a few days or weeks. I don't know. I might forget about it. Moving on to NASCAR news. NASCAR looked to purchase a 50% stake in the Long Beach street race. So the Long Beach street race, the rights to hold that event were held by Gerald Forsyth, who was a kart team owner in the 90s, and Kevin Kalkoven, who was a kart team owner in the 2000s. Kalkoven passed away a few years ago, and his estate was looking to sell his stake in the event. NASCAR came in and said, hey, maybe we want to do this. And a ton of the IndyCar fans are like, absolutely not. You're not stealing another track from the schedule, because we saw what they did with Texas. We saw what they might be doing with Iowa, because Cup Series is going to Iowa this year, and if they do really well at that track compared to IndyCar, we might be a little bit screwed. But they this has to work. But NASCAR came in and said, hey, maybe we want to buy this stake in the Long Beach street race, maybe hold, because with Auto Club Speedway gone and with the future of the LA Coliseum uncertain, those venues mean that NASCAR has 2 races on the West Coast and none in California. Well, and not even on the West Coast. We have Las Vegas and we have Phoenix. That's it. 0 races in California, which is a huge market. My opinion, you just keep the Clash at the Coliseum. I've heard that they might move it to Dodger Stadium, but just gonna have to see. But NASCAR wanted to purchase this to possibly run another street race to basically just try and duplicate Chicago, which Chicago worked because it was a solo event, because it was the only event like it, so it had a lot more publicity. NASCAR looked to purchase that 50% stake, and Gerald Forsythe comes in and buys the other 50% from Kevin Kalkoven's estate, saying, this is an IndyCar event. It will be an IndyCar event, and at least until I die. Which is a very surprising move for Gerald Forsythe, because Gerald Forsythe hates modern IndyCar. He, as a kart team owner, as a Champ Car team owner, he sticked with Champ Car until it just died, and then his team shut its doors. He never touched the IRL. Actually, that's not true, because his company sponsored Marco Andretti once. But Gerald Forsythe hated the IRL. He hated Tony George. I'm guessing his stance on IndyCar is changing now that Penske's bought the series. Since both Penske and Forsythe were kart team owners back in the 90s. It's very interesting, because the financially better outcome for Gerald Forsythe was to let NASCAR have that 50% share. Him buying that 50% from Kalkoven's estate is huge, because that's one of the that's a huge rift that was still created from the IndyCar split, which ended in 2008. That's gone. So Gerald Forsythe committed Long Beach to an IndyCar event, basically for the rest of his life, which is that's awesome. So the second biggest event will not get stolen by NASCAR off of the IndyCar schedule. So we still have our only other crown jewel event outside of the Indy 500, which is awesome. Thank you, Gerald Forsythe. Everyone in the industry loves you now. Back onto the NASCAR side, talked about MBM Motorsports earlier. MBM will be running 3 more Cup races. They'll be running Martinsville with a to-be named driver. They will be running the North Wilkesboro All-Star Open with Timmy Hill, which means that Timmy Hill is going to be a huge contender to win the fan vote and get into the All-Star race. And they are also going to run the Coca-Cola 600 with David Starr. We do not know who's going to be behind the wheel at Martinsville. And that's only in a couple weeks. So, it's the week after this week in Richmond, because NASCAR did a dumb and scheduled all the short tracks within a month of each other. Well, most of them. Wilkesboro's in May. But moving on, we have IndyCar news. The grid is set to grow to 29 full-time cars next year, pending nobody pulls out or gets bought out by somebody else. Prema Racing, best known for their exploits in Europe in F2, F3, FR, F4, whatever. F, add a number or letter or academy at the end. I don't know. well known for their being very good in their F1 feature series. Their two drivers right now are Ollie Behrman and Kimi Antonelli in F2, and they're both reserve and test drivers for Ferrari and Mercedes. So they've had a lot of talent come through that program, and they have bought two Chevrolet engine leases for 2025 for IndyCar, which is great. I saw a great racer.com article about this. Growing grids are a great problem for IndyCar to have. We haven't had this big of a grid since 2011. Like we had 30 cars at Texas. Prema's lineup right now, they want, from what I've heard, they want an experienced IndyCar driver, and they want a newcomer. So they want a newcomer, and they want somebody that's more experienced with an IndyCar to help them get used to it. So my picks, my main pick for the seat, the Prema seat, for the experienced IndyCar driver is Callum Ilott. In a perfect world, it would be Oliver Askew, but because he's underrated and deserves a ride. But in a reasonable world, it's going to be Callum Ilott. Newcomer, I have absolutely no clue. I've heard Logan Sargent's name get thrown around. If he gets unceremoniously fired by Williams, I bet he would be welcome over here. I've also heard that Ollie Behrman and Kimi Antonelli might come over here. I highly doubt that's going to happen because they're getting paid the big bucks from Ferrari and Mercedes, and I think they're going to be content with just raking in the money right now. And especially with Ferrari may having an open seat in the next couple years, depending on when Lewis Hamilton's going to retire. But that's going to be a very interesting story to follow. They will be revealing their cars in the next couple weeks, apparently. So that'll be fun to check out. So continuing on the F1 train, Australia, we finally had a different winner other than Max Verstappen because his brakes decided to just die on like lap 6. So Carlos Sainz took the lead and never looked back. But of course, it's not an F1 race without controversy. We had George Russell crashing late in the race to set up a safety car finish. I think it finished under safety car. Fernando Alonso, despite not hitting George Russell, was penalized for making him crash because in the eyes of the FIA, which the FIA is extremely blind apparently, but in the eyes of the FIA, Alonso brake checked Russell. Alonso was well ahead of him, and taking his line into the corner, Russell made a mistake, but they decided to penalize Alonso for it. Sure, he might have been a little bit aggressive. Both of them might have been because it was the last, 5 laps or whatever. But this was dumb. It's just dumb. This may be the dumbest F1 penalty I've ever seen. But before I lose my mind a little more, let's go to the other news, which there's actually quite a lot of this week. Lola is back again. The brand got resurrected by gentleman driver Till Bechtelsheimer last year, and is now planning to enter Formula E as a team, but they're bringing a new powertrain manufacturer with them in Yamaha. This is going to be Yamaha's first foray into four-wheel cars since the 1990s when they built an F1 engine that was horrendously slow. So this is going to be Yamaha's first four-wheel car in, I don't even know, 30 years. More Formula E news. Nissan is staying around for the Gen 4 regulations, which I'm just hoping that the Gen 4 car is better looking than the Gen 3. The Gen 3 looks dumb. The Gen 2 is where it's at because you added the halo, you added the fenders. Those cars could bump each other to absolutely no avail. And the racing was entertaining. The race is entertaining with the Gen 3 cars now, but we've seen a lot of really dumb, giant accidents that just might not have happened had the car had fenders. Even saying that, the Gen 3 has grown on me a little bit. I like it slightly. And Liberty Walk knocked it out of the park with their quote unquote well, it's not a wide body, they just modified it. They just modified the crap out of a Gen 3 car. But I'm hoping the Gen 4 car looks better. Just so I start watching Formula E again. Next year, World Endurance Championship is requiring 2-car hypercar teams. This is for factory entries. So teams like Jota already have 2 cars, but teams like Cadillac, Lamborghini, and Isotta Fraschini are going to have to abide by this rule. The two cars don't have to be run by the same team. They just have to have 2 cars that are factory supported in the field. And again, like Proton competition can stay at 1 car because they aren't a factory-backed team. So Duquesne might have to run a second Isotta Fraschini LMH car next year, which means we're going to have 2 horrendously slow hypercars. So we basically have the 2-car LMP2 fields that IMSA had a couple years ago, or like in 2019. That was 5 years ago. Jeez. I feel old now. Peugeot, oh boy, they revealed their 9X8 Evo. They put a wing on it, and it actually looks really good. Like, it doesn't look that far off of the original 9X8. The wing still sits very low, so it still looks like it doesn't have a wing, basically. But it sits super low out of the airstream, basically. This car still looks like it's gonna go really fast at Le Mans, and I really hope Peugeot wins Le Mans. That'll be really awesome to see. Speaking of Le Mans, multiple hydrogen-powered cars are going to run there in June during Le Mans week. I think that includes the H24 car. I know Toyota's developing a hydrogen prototype. I haven't heard of any other projects that are working on hydrogen cars right now that are ready, because I know Hyundai wants to join, Toyota wants to. There are quite a few manufacturers that want to join the hydrogen class whenever hypercar gets phased out, which that'll be a very sad day when hypercar gets phased out. My move was to just recreate a 4-class system where you have hypercar, you have the new LMP2 regulations, and you have the hydrogen cars as a third tier prototype class between the LMP2s and the GT cars. That's my thing. But anyway, that is going to be it for this week's edition of the TWIR Weekly Podcast. I was a couple days late. Probably going to be back on Friday. Friday is going to be when I do these, probably, and then just upload them on Saturday. Hope you have a wonderful day. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any more content. And I will see you guys next week.